Something can change outside your door much faster than your mind can prepare for it. If another season of restrictions, closures, shortages, or uncertainty ever comes, the greatest danger may not be the event itself. It may be meeting that event with a mind that was already exhausted before it began. Chosen one, that is the warning. Not a warning meant to frighten you, a warning meant to free you from preparing for the wrong thing. You have spent enough time looking outward, watching signs, watching people, watching institutions. And every time the world feels unstable, your mind starts searching for one more piece of information that might make you feel safe. Maybe something is changing. Maybe nothing dramatic happens tomorrow. But either way, the question you need answered is, same. What condition will next season find you in? There is a form of preparation that nobody can store in a basement, order in bulk, or collect from 10 different voices online. It is the ability to see clearly when everybody else becomes noisy, to recognize what matters when information multiplies, to make a decision without needing 20 confirmations. That kind of readiness does not predict the future. It prepares you to meet it without losing yourself. Think about the last time a prediction made you nervous. You opened one message, then another, then another. For a few minutes, you felt informed, even relieved. But soon the relief disappeared, and your mind started searching again for one more voice that could tell you what was coming. That pattern matters. Reassurance can feel like preparation while doing nothing to increase your clarity. You consume more information, but you do not become more settled. You collect more warnings, but you do not become more decisive. The mind stays hungry because the thing it actually needs has not been addressed yet. So ask yourself a simple question. If another difficult season began tomorrow, would your current information make you calmer, or would it give your mind even more things to process? Just notice what happens inside you when you imagine uncertainty arriving before you feel completely ready. This is where the final step begins. Not with a secret date, not with a hidden announcement, not with another person claiming they know exactly what happens next. It begins with understanding why your mind can hold so much information and feel unprepared. Once you see that mechanism, you stop confusing alertness with readiness. Chosen one, you are not here to become frightened before everybody else. Sensitivity without discernment becomes anxiety. Discernment without action becomes frustration. Action without clarity becomes chaos. The final step is where those three come together. Before we go deeper, write this if it feels true for you. I choose clarity. That declaration is not about pretending uncertainty does not exist. It is about refusing to let uncertainty decide the state of your mind before anything has even happened. Hold one question. If information is not the missing piece, what is? The answer explains why you can know more than ever and still feel less certain than you did years ago. It also explains why one more prediction may give temporary relief, but never the readiness you have actually been searching for. Whatever comes next matters, but the state in which it finds you matters more. Before you can prepare for the next season, you have to recognize the trap that has been disguising itself as preparation all along. The trap is clear. When uncertainty rises, your mind starts demanding certainty. You search harder, you compare more voices, you save more warnings. And because each new piece of information gives you brief control, the searching starts to feel responsible. But control and preparation are not the same. One gives your nervous system a temporary answer. The other increases your ability to respond when the answer changes. You may recognize this pattern. You open one alarming message before breakfast. Then you check whether anyone else is saying the same thing. Soon you have 6 tabs open and no clearer sense of what you should actually do. The mind feels busy. Busy can imitate readiness. But busy is not the same as clear. The common explanation is that you simply need better information. Maybe another source will settle it. Maybe one more prediction will reveal the missing detail. But if the search is increasing your agitation, more information can become fuel for the state you are trying to escape. Here is the hidden mechanism. Uncertainty creates information hunger. Information hunger promises relief, but it rarely knows when it has been fed enough. The moment one question closes, another appears. What if this happens? What if that person is right? What if I missed something? Soon your attention is no longer gathering facts. It is trying to purchase certainty that no human being can guarantee. That is the false preparation trap. You feel active because you are consuming. You feel alert because you are scanning. Yet none of those actions automatically make the next decision easier. Sometimes they make it harder because your mind is carrying too many unfinished possibilities at once. This does not mean you should ignore real information. It means information needs a boundary. Facts can help you prepare. Endless speculation can keep you suspended. The question is whether a message leads toward clear action or leaves you needing another message. So use a simple test. When a frightening claim reaches you, do not let the first emotional surge choose your next move. Write down what is actually being claimed. Separate what is verified from what is predicted. Then ask what part of the situation is truly inside your control during the next 24 hours. Then step away. Let the emotional charge fall. Come back when you are quieter. Is there a useful action here, or only a demand for more attention? That pause can reveal whether you are gathering information or feeding anxiety. This is not about pretending disruption could never happen. It is about refusing to build your inner life around a prediction that has not become reality. You can prepare without fear. You can stay informed without surrendering attention. If that is the posture you choose, say it clearly. I prepare without fear. Not because you know everything, not because nothing can surprise you, but because you are learning to separate readiness from compulsive scanning, and that distinction gives your mind room to breathe again. Now something deeper appears. Even after you reduce the noise, you may still notice another problem. You can know exactly what the next right step is and still fail to take it. You can understand the lesson, agree with it, even feel it deeply, and then wake up tomorrow inside the same hesitation. That is not the same trap. It is a different gap. And once you name that gap, a great deal of what you have blamed on discipline, motivation, or spiritual weakness begins to look very different. Now we reach the gap that most people never name. You can receive a clear insight and still remain motionless. You can know what needs to change. Yet when the moment to act arrives, something inside you slows down, scatters, or quietly retreats. Chosen one, this is not always laziness. It is not always lack of faith. And it is not always a character flaw. Sometimes the message is clear while the receiver is tired. That changes the question from what is wrong with me to what condition am I trying to act from. Think about how this shows up. You have a strong idea late at night, and by morning the energy is gone. You walk into a room and forget why you came. You read the same paragraph twice. You delay a simple decision because every option feels heavier than it should. Then shame begins. You push harder because you think force will fix the problem. The extra effort creates more exhaustion, and the exhaustion becomes evidence that you are failing. I call this the receiver gap. It is the distance between insight and usable action. You may understand something completely, but understanding still has to pass through attention, memory, emotional regulation, and decision-making before it becomes movement. When those systems are overloaded, insight can remain true without becoming practical. That is why more inspiration does not always solve hesitation. More advice does not always create execution. More signs do not automatically create movement. The problem may not be that the signal is weak. The problem may be that too much noise is competing for the same limited space. Instead of saying, I need to become a better person, ask, what is crowding my receiver? Instead of attacking yourself, look at the condition from which you are trying to think. That shift, gives you a more useful place to begin. Now imagine uncertainty rising outside you. Messages are changing, people are reacting, opinions are multiplying by the hour. One version of you absorbs everything, checks everything, and slowly loses the ability to distinguish important information from emotional noise. But there is another version. This version pauses before reacting. It notices what is true, what is speculation, and what actually requires action today. The world is still loud. The circumstances are still uncertain. But the mind meeting those circumstances is no longer carrying every voice at the same volume. That is the preparation we are building toward. Not perfect calm, not supernatural certainty, functional clarity. Enough space inside your attention to recognize what matters and move when movement is required. There is one more reason this receiver gap matters. Many people remember a younger version of their own mind, faster in some ways, more curious, more imaginative, able to disappear into an idea for hours. Maybe you remember that version too. You asked questions without worrying whether they sounded impressive. You connected strange ideas. You created before you learned to judge everything you created. Most people simply call the loss of that state growing up. Maybe part of it is. But what if that explanation is incomplete? What if some of the clarity you think you need to build from nothing is actually something you once accessed more naturally? Hold that question, because the next step is not about becoming somebody new. It is about understanding what may have happened to the mind you already remember, and why returning to clarity can feel less like invention and more like returning. You remember that younger mind for a reason. It was not perfect. It was not always calm, but it was alive in a way that many adults spend years trying to recover. You could become absorbed in one idea. You could imagine without asking whether imagination was useful. You could follow curiosity until the world around you disappeared. Chosen one, that memory matters. Not because childhood was magical in every way. It matters because part of you remembers what it felt like when thinking required less force. You did not need 5 reminders to begin. You did not need 20 opinions before trusting one clear instinct. Something moved more naturally. Most people call the loss of that state growing up. Some change is normal. Responsibilities increase. Stress becomes real. But there is another possibility worth considering. What if part of what you call maturity is actually adaptation to constant interruption, constant urgency, and constant pressure to divide your attention? Think about an ordinary day. A message arrives before breakfast. Another appears while you are working. A headline interrupts lunch. A notification reaches you before the thought you were having has even finished. Your attention is trained to turn, stop, turn again, and begin again, until scattered thinking starts to feel normal. Over time, you may stop noticing the difference. You call the fog age, you call the hesitation, personality, you call the loss of imagination, responsibility. But what if some of that decline has a more specific address? What if you are not trying to become someone new at all? I call this the stolen clarity effect. Not because someone secretly reached into your mind and took something from you. The theft is quieter than that. It happens when years of fragmented attention make a reduced state feel permanent, and you forget that another way of thinking ever felt natural. That reframe changes the emotional weight. You are no longer standing at the bottom of a mountain trying to invent a better mind. You are looking for a path back toward capacities you have already touched before. Curiosity, focus, pattern, recognition, creative connection, the feeling that your own mind is working with you. And this is where the story becomes more interesting. Over the past few decades, researchers have studied how different parts of the brain contribute to perception, attention, language, creativity, and coordinated thought. One line of research made me look at the receiver problem differently. I am not going to name the tool connected to that research yet. You do not need a product name before you understand the problem. But I want you to hold one question as we continue. What if some of what you have called spiritual fog has a physical address too? That question matters because it challenges two extremes at once. It does not reduce your inner life to biology, and it does not require you to explain every difficult mental state as a spiritual attack. It simply asks whether the instrument through which you notice, decide, remember, and act deserves attention too. If the answer is yes, then the final step cannot be more information alone. It has to involve the condition receiving that information. And once you see that, the next mystery becomes unavoidable. Why can a person understand the problem completely, agree with the solution completely, and still fail to move? That question brings us to the hardest part. Understanding can feel like progress, because something inside you finally makes sense. But understanding is not movement. You can identify the pattern, name the pattern, and still wake up tomorrow repeating it. Chosen one. This is where many sincere people become trapped. They assume the answer must be more knowledge. So they watch another message, read another book, save another insight. Each one adds language to the problem, but language alone does not guarantee action. You may have tried meditation, you may have tried journaling, prayer, visualization, or audio programs. Some may have helped, some may have done very little. The important question is not whether you tried enough methods. The important question is what mechanism each method was actually addressing. If the problem is emotional, one tool may help. If the problem involves attention and cognitive overload, repeating a spiritual practice harder may not address the same layer. That does not make the practice false. It means a real problem can exist on more than one level. This is why forcing yourself often fails. More pressure is added to a system already carrying pressure. More content is added to a mind already carrying content. Then the person concludes that nothing works, when the deeper issue may be that the receiver has never been restored enough to USE what it receives. Remember the research question I asked you to hold? I told you there was a scientific discovery connected to the way the human brain is organized, and that we would return after the shape of the problem became clear. We are almost there. But first, you need the final reframe. I call it the final step principle. Knowledge is not the finish line. Knowledge must be received clearly and converted into movement. If that middle process breaks down, collecting more knowledge can create the illusion of progress while your life remains unchanged. Think of the sequence simply. You know, you receive, you move. The first step can happen in seconds. The last step may never happen if the condition between them is overloaded. That is why someone can hear the perfect sentence and still remain stuck for another year. This explains why your next season does not require perfect prediction. You do not need to know every event in advance. You need enough clarity to recognize what matters when information changes, and enough usable attention to act before hesitation becomes another month of waiting. So here is the question that closes one loop and opens the final one. Why does knowing all of this still not create movement? Why can insight be completely true and still remain only insight? The missing piece may not be another belief. It may be the condition from which belief becomes action. That is the final step. Not prophecy, not panic, not one more warning. It is restoring the receiver enough that what you already know can finally become something you live. And this is where the research I mentioned earlier becomes unexpectedly relevant. Decades ago, work on the divided functions of the human brain changed how scientists understood its two hemispheres. The work later received the Nobel Prize. What matters is the question it opens. If coordinated brain function influences how you process and respond, could improving that coordination support the clarity you have been trying to force through effort alone? Now, the shape of the problem is clear. You are not missing one more prophecy. You are not missing one more warning. The issue is the distance between knowing and moving, and the condition of the receiver that must carry insight into action. This is who this matters for. The person who has already done inner work. The person who can recognize truth but still feels mentally crowded. You do not need more shame. You need a clearer way to understand why insight can be present while execution remains difficult. Remember the research thread I asked you to hold. In 1981, Dr. Roger Sperry received the Nobel Prize for work involving split brain research. His work helped establish that the two hemispheres have specialized functions while participating in the larger activity of one brain. The team behind the resource I am about to describe builds its explanation from that foundation. They focus on hemisphere synchronization and what they call whole brain activation. Their claim is that a more coordinated state may support clearer thinking, creativity, and more integrated attention. Before I tell you the name, consider two stories shared in the product materials. A woman from California described years of mental fog and the feeling that life kept happening to her. After using the program, she described feeling clearer and more connected again. A man from Texas described a different version of the same problem. He carried work and family responsibility while feeling mentally foggy. After using the program, he reported that his thinking felt sharper and more available. These are testimonials, not guarantees. Individual results can differ, but the mechanism the team says they are targeting is what makes this resource relevant to the receiver problem we have been discussing. The resource is called the Genius Switch. It is an 8-minute targeted auditory sequence created by a team led by Doctor Daniel Barone, a neurologist in New York City. Their materials call the approach neural sync technology, designed around hemisphere synchronization and whole brain activation. The routine is simple: headphones, eyes closed, 8 minutes a day. The team distinguishes it from generic soundtracks and meditation apps. They position it as a targeted auditory sequence built around their neural synchronization approach. That distinction matters if you have already tried many tools. You are not being asked to believe that every audio product works. You are being asked to evaluate one specific mechanism and decide whether it fits the layer of the problem you now understand. The Genius Switch is not for everyone. It is for the chosen one who has stopped treating every moment of fog as a moral failure. It is for the person who has done sincere inner work and is willing to support clarity at the level of the receiver as well as belief. Now consider the offer as the product page presents it. Colleagues reportedly suggested a value of $500. The listed price is $49. The current page presents an additional reduction to $39. The purchase also includes 4 bonuses described by the seller: a guided visualization, a smart grocery shopping guide, a classic manifestation book, and a printable 5 Habits infographic. The purchase includes lifetime access and a money-back guarantee according to the product materials. The point is not to pressure you with a number. Every month you remain trapped between insight and action is another month in which good ideas can remain unused. You cannot control when uncertainty arrives, but you can decide whether you keep postponing the work of becoming clearer. There is one caution from the product team. They say similarly named tracks can appear elsewhere, but those are not their verified program. Their materials state that the official version is distributed only through their direct page. If your spirit resonates with what has been described, the link in the description and pinned comment will take you to the page where Dr. Barone and his team explain the program, the guarantee, and the current offer. Read the details before making any decision. A tool does not replace discernment. It does not replace responsibility. It does not make the next decision for you. What it can do, if it supports you as intended, is serve the receiver that still has to carry your choices into action. The tool does not replace God. It does not replace discernment. It does not replace obedience. And it does not surrender for you. What it can do is support the condition from which you listen, decide, and act. That is where we return now. Chosen one. This matters because clarity can become another idol if you are not careful. You can start believing that if your mind feels perfect, every decision will become easy. Life does not work that way. Clear people still face hard choices. Grounded people still feel uncertainty. The difference is that they do not hand every difficult moment over to panic. The deeper current of this message was never about buying a tool. It was about becoming harder to pull away from your own center. A clearer receiver can help, but the next right action still belongs to you. No audio can make that choice for you. No method can live your values for you. That is why the final step is larger than any product. It is the moment when you stop waiting for total certainty before you move. You use what is true. You release what is speculation. You choose the next action that belongs to you, and you let tomorrow reveal what tomorrow actually contains. If the resource described earlier stirred something in you, that door is still open in the description and pinned comment. You can read the details and decide calmly. There is no need to force a decision from fear. But there is another door that no link can open. It is the door between clarity and responsibility. Many people say they want a clear mind, but what they really want is a guarantee that the clear choice will never cost them anything. That guarantee does not exist. Sometimes clarity tells you to rest. Sometimes it tells you to leave. Sometimes it tells you to make the call you have delayed for months. Sometimes it tells you to stop consuming information and begin using what you already know. The message can change, but the requirement is the same. You must be willing to move. This is where chosen one language has to become more than identity. Being chosen is not a permission slip to wait forever. It is a call to become responsible for what you can see. If you recognize the pattern, then recognition creates a new obligation. You cannot keep pretending you do not know. Notice how different that feels from panic. Panic says, act now because something terrible might happen. Discernment says, act now because one thing is already clear. The first is driven by fear. The second is driven by alignment. So, before we close this message, there is one final test. It is simple enough to remember when the world becomes loud. It does not require a prediction. It does not require a perfect mood. And no product can complete it for you. You will have to answer 3 questions. What is true? What is mine? What moves today? Those 3 questions can return you to the center when everything outside you is asking for your attention at once. And when you answer them honestly, you may discover that readiness is much quieter than you expected. It is not a bunker inside the mind. It is not endless vigilance. It is the ability to meet reality without adding 10 imaginary realities on top of it. That is the final piece we are going to practice now. Not because uncertainty is disappearing, because you are learning how to stop disappearing inside uncertainty. The first door asks one question. What is true? Not what is trending, not what somebody fears, not what your imagination has already turned into a complete future. What is actually known in this moment? Under uncertainty, prediction can begin to feel like fact. A possibility gets repeated enough times, and the body starts responding as if it has already happened. The first door interrupts that process. It brings you back to what reality has actually confirmed. The second door asks, what is mine? What belongs inside your control today? You may not control a government decision, a market shift, another person's behavior, or what appears in tomorrow's news. But you can control what you consume, what you prepare, who you contact, and what choice you make next. Without it, your mind spends energy trying to solve events it cannot touch. You rehearse 10 futures and live none of them. The question, what is mine, returns energy to the part of life where your action can still create a difference. The third door asks, what moves today? Not next month, not when you feel fearless, not after one more confirmation. What is one useful action that can happen within the next 24 hours? Maybe it is making a call. Maybe it is organizing one practical need. Maybe it is turning off the noise for an evening. Maybe it is beginning the work you keep postponing. This is the three-door test. What is true? What is mine? What moves today? When those questions are answered in order, they stop fear from making every possibility equally important. They give your receiver something cleaner to work with. Now I want you to experience the difference, instead of only understanding it. If you are somewhere safe, let your eyes close for a moment. Let your shoulders soften. Do not force a special feeling. Just notice the weight of your body where you are. Imagine the world outside becoming louder. Messages arrive, people react. Somebody insists that everything is about to change. Another voice says the opposite. The noise is real, but you do not have to let every voice become a command inside your body. Ask quietly, what is true? Let one fact remain. Then ask, what is mine? Let everything outside your control move one step farther away. Finally ask, what moves today? Allow one small action to become visible. Notice your jaw, let it loosen. Notice your breathing, let it stay natural. You are not trying to manufacture certainty. You are teaching your mind that uncertainty does not require immediate surrender. Place a hand over your chest if that feels natural. Let this be the somatic anchor. When noise rises, return to the three doors. Truth, responsibility, movement. You do not need to carry the entire future in order to take one faithful step in the present. And now there is only one decision left. Which version of you walks into what comes next? The version that needs the world to become quiet first, or the version that can remain clear enough to act while the world is still loud? You came into this message with one question hanging over everything. What is the final step? Now, the answer is clear. The final step is no longer waiting for the outside world to give you certainty before you become internally ready to act. You do not need another prediction to tell you who to become. You do not need another warning to make fear feel responsible. You can stay informed without becoming consumed. You can prepare without rehearsing disaster. You can listen without giving every voice authority over your mind. Remember where we began. More information did not always create more peace. That was the false preparation trap. Then we named the receiver gap, the distance between insight and usable action. We remembered the mind you once accessed more naturally, and we asked whether clarity could be supported instead of forced. Then the final principle appeared. You know, you receive, you move. The sequence is simple, but your life changes when you stop treating the first step as the finish line. Knowing is valuable. Movement is where knowing becomes lived. So, whatever comes next, let it meet a different version of you. Not a version who claims to know every future event. Not a version who never feels fear. Let it meet the version who can separate fact from speculation, responsibility from noise, and action from endless waiting. Chosen one. Say this inside yourself now. I am not waiting for another prediction to give me permission to move. I choose clarity. I choose discernment. I choose the next right action. Whatever comes next will meet a more prepared version of me. Let that declaration settle. You are not promising that life will become easy. You are not pretending uncertainty has disappeared. You are choosing the state from which you will meet uncertainty when it arrives. If the resource described earlier is part of your next right step, you already know where it is. You can consider it calmly. But the deeper invitation is here, and it belongs to you whether you use that resource or not. Choose one true thing. Choose one thing that belongs to you. Choose one action that can move today. Then let that action become your evidence that clarity is no longer only something you understand. If this message marks that decision for you, write these words. Whatever comes next, I will meet it. Clear. Not because you control the future, because you are becoming less controlled by the fear of it. You may have no idea what is coming next. You no longer need to know every detail before you begin. The final step was never knowing the future. It was becoming ready to meet it.